And welcome to the City of Warrenville Community Development and Planning Committee meeting of the whole on Monday, September 9th, 2019. Clerk, could I please have the roll call?
Alderman Ashour?
Here.
Alderman Berry?
Here.
Alderman Bevere?
Here.
Alderman Davalos?
Here.
Alderman Goodman?
Here.
Alderman Krischel?
Here.
Alderman Widener?
Here.
Alderman Wilson?
Here. Thank you. Now, why don't everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now's the time that we set aside for citizens' comments. There were forms out in the hallway. If you choose as a citizen, you may share your comments on the agenda items while the item is being discussed by the committee. If you do choose to give a citizen comment, please come to the podium, adjust the microphone, state your name, address, and offer your thoughts and comments. Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to? Oh, I'm sorry. I have one other announcement to make. If everyone would please turn off your cell phones. We get interference on our recordings of the meeting minutes when that happens. So if you would kindly disable them, it'd be appreciated. And now, did we have someone who wanted to make a public comment? Okay, thank you.
My name is Jerry Walters. I live at 645 Wilbur Avenue in Warrenville. Lived there for 42 years. Wonderful city, wonderful city. I actually really didn't have a lot of comments other than I understood that Naperville just recently opted out for, selling cannabis as recreational cannabis. And that a lot of the reasons that they gave were as a result of having people concerned about the health of people using cannabis, that long-term studies, or I should say studies that showed long-term usage of cannabis, people that had that were 30% more likely to develop a psychosis later on in their life. It's just not a healthy thing, not to mention maybe the type of customers or clients that it would attract. After saying comments like that, I really actually have a question more for the city, because I think that part of the reason why it would even be considered to be selling cannabis in the city of Warrenville is because maybe the city needs money. So my question is, does the city need money?
We generally listen to comments from citizens when they come up to make citizen comments. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure all the aldermen might have, some variation on what they might comment in regards to your question. And we try not to intimidate anyone when they're making their comments, so we often don't give replies, but we will take your question under consideration. Okay. And think of it thoughtfully.
Okay. Is the financial health of the city of Warrenville in relatively good shape?
Again, we usually allow 2 or 3 minutes for citizens to make their comments.
Okay, no questions then.
You can ask questions, but we generally don't.
I'm not getting an answer.
we generally don't reply out of a courtesy. It's actually a courtesy to the person making a comment.
Oh, really? I'm not offended.
Okay.
So if you want to answer it, go ahead. I really don't know what the financial health of the city of Warrenville's,
okay.
Financial is. And so you're not offended. You're not going to offend me.
Okay.
If you say it's crummy, okay, fine. You know what I mean? If you say it's wonderful, that's fine too. I just need to know.
Okay. If you go on the city's website and read all the information, you will get full disclosure on our confidence within our budget.
All right. My comment then would be, is if the city has a healthy financial situation, there's no reason to invite this type of sales in our city. All right, if we're financially sound, as a city, it doesn't make any sense at all to invite this type of commerce to enter the city. That's it.
Thank you for your comments. The city administrator would like to make a comment. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. I think on the form, if you want to fill out that you want to speak, so we have your name and everything for the record, it does ask if you want to follow up, or if you do have questions, you want to list them on there, that you want someone to follow up with you, we'd be happy to do that. Part of it is just about the timeliness of a meeting. If we have 50 people that want to come and talk at a meeting, and we try to engage with everyone in the meeting, you'll probably be going to work right after here tomorrow morning instead of getting home in a timely manner. So certainly, if you have questions and you'd like to follow up, please fill that out, and we'll do our best to get back to you in a timely manner. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who's completed a form who would like to make a public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll turn the microphone over to the officials and staff members for their comments. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one thing tonight, I wanted to recognize one of our valued employees for 25 years of service. Our Community and Economic Development Director, Ron Metzer, has been with us for 25 years now, and he's been largely responsible for the prosperity that we see in the city in terms of development, and I wanted to thank him for his dedication. When he first came here to work, he moved his family to Warrenville, and they've lived here ever since, and he's raised his family here, shown a remarkable loyalty to this community, and done a terrific job for us. So Ron, thank you so much, and another 25? Thanks, Ron.
Would I be right in saying you only felt like it was 24 and a half years? Well, thank you again for your service. Other comments? Yes.
I want to publicly thank the council and the Hotel Motel Tax Grant Program for the flowers that the Warrenville in Bloom program puts out with the bridge planters and the hanging baskets and our ground planters. You might have noticed the hanging baskets have bit the dirt. So they're going to be taken down this week, and the bridge planters will be taken down. And we have some money left in our grant to water the round planters along the Prairie Path and in front of the buildings. So we'd like to thank you again for another successful year. We're proud of what they looked like this year. Thank you.
And thanks to everybody from Warrenville and Bloom for making it happen. It's great to have the volunteer commitments and people who believe in the community so heartily that they, take care of the plants and raise funds and do all the work that they do, making our city look so beautiful. And sadly, I guess it's a sign of the change of the seasons when this happens. Yes. Other comments? Okay, we'll go on to the business of the meeting. Tonight's first agenda item is an informational presentation on recreational legalization, zoning, tax, and related city regulatory decisions. Again, this is an informational item. The city council and the members here will not be taking any action. It's just to provide information to us. And at this point, I'll turn it over to City Administrator John Coakley.
Thank you. I'm just going to briefly introduce our presenter tonight, but I just want to make a couple of quick comments. As you may or may not know, the state legislature passed a law this last session, and in June, the governor signed the bill. If I get anything wrong, the attorney will correct me in a moment with the facts, but as of January 1st, we have to have some decisions made locally. He's going to give the details, but the main issues for the city are not whether or not recreational adult use of cannabis is going to be allowed, because the state has decided that. After January 1st, that will be allowed. I'm not trying to step on your story here in a minute.
Step away.
But there are some issues about whether it can be sold or dispensaries can be located in town and how you deal with those things, which the city council must make decisions on, and the plan commission will talk about all those upcoming meetings where there's a lot more opportunities than tonight this is the start for the city to look at these issues, not the end. That will come after a whole long process in a few months when they'll be making a decision. Anyway, I want to introduce, my main point tonight is not to speak, is to introduce our speaker. Stuart Weiss is one of the attorneys with our law firm that the city uses for its legal input, legal advice, legal counsel, Holland and Knight. I don't have all of your bio, but Stuart has become one of the experts in the state on all the regulations, and starting with medical marijuana use and now the recreational, because he was their in-house expert on those things. And I've heard a little bit of his presentation about medical marijuana and the future coming attractions, if you will, that the state legislature was likely to pass this. But without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Stuart. He's going to give us the highlights of the legal issues that we, as a city, need to deal with and we need to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, it's a little bit hot. Let's put it down there. Oh, am I that? Okay, there we go. So I'm Stu Weiss from Holland and Knight. I work with the attorneys that you work with on a regular basis. And as the administrator said, I became kind of default the expert on this subject, not from any particular personal interest, but mainly because I saw this was coming down the pike legislatively and started reaching out to the legislative sponsors because there wasn't a lot of communication coming through. And I tracked the bill as it came through. Tonight I'm going to talk about what we ended up with at the end of last session, what's going to happen on January 1st, how it's going to affect what's allowed, what's prohibited, what will be taxed, and then what is left up for you as the city council to decide. The good news is that there's a lot for you to decide. There are certain fundamental changes that are happening in the law regarding personal consumption, which are out of our hands at the local level. But what happens in your community is very much up to you. And I can tell you that I've done this presentation for a number of our clients. Not one of these sessions has gone the same. Some clients have decided to take a very permissive attitude towards this. Some have decided to outright ban. And in the end, of course, we have no position on this. We want to make sure that you guys have the regulations that fit your community. And luckily, the legislature hasn't taken away too much away from us in that respect. So let's see here. All right. Let's see. Maybe if I... Okay, good. Okay, Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. It was passed on the last day of the legislative session, and then it was signed by Governor Pritzker at the end of June. Key components of this law: adult possession and use of cannabis for recreational purposes will be legal. Marijuana will be, or cannabis, I'm going to keep using cannabis because it's easier and I don't fall into using colloquialisms like weed or reefer or anything like that. It's cannabis. Will be allowed the same as liquor. So if you are over 21, you can purchase it, you can use it. There are limitations on where you can use it, and I'll get into that in the following slides. There will be a probably a rapid but controlled expansion of cultivation centers and dispensaries. Cultivation centers are the industrial agricultural facilities where the product is grown. It's all grown indoors because we have a four-season state. And dispensaries are the specific stores where they're sold. There are currently 56 medical dispensaries in the state, and there is expected to be an expansion of those. I'll get into how much it will expand. That's a little bit of a guessing game because every community is going through this same process and deciding whether they want to opt in or opt out. There will be new cannabis businesses that were previously not part of kind of the market ecology of cannabis in Illinois. There will be craft growers, which are going to be smaller operators, kind of similar along the line of like a craft brewery. There will be processors, infusers, and transporters. These are going to be links in a supply chain that create myriads of other different types of cannabis products. So it's not just going to be the plant in its kind of undisturbed form. It's going to be all sorts of tinctures, oils, butters, lotions, whatever you can think of, candies. And I'll talk a little bit, there's going to be a whole myriad of state and local taxes that are coming along with this change in law. There's also going to be mass expungement of minor violations of the Cannabis Control Act. These are minor possession and use violations. It's not something we're going to get into much tonight. It's something that we will be working with your police department on because it's going to impact the workload of your records clerk a lot. But that is something that is not really, I can speak on it, but it's not really the focus of tonight's discussion. And then a very large part of the act, I'd say a good third of it, is dedicated to social equity programs. The authors of the bill and the supporters tried to build on a lot because they felt that prohibition had caused a lot of societal ills. There are a lot of things that try and rectify that. Whether those will be successful, we don't know. And once again, that doesn't have as much impact on you guys. That's something that's going to be happening at the state level. So timing. The act became effective upon the governor's signature, but all that did was set into motion a lot of work at the state agency level. So the agencies between Department of Agricultural, Illinois State Police, the Department of Finance and Professional Regulation, all of those departments began staffing up, the lawyers there are furiously drafting new administrative rules, which the Tribune noted we haven't seen anything yet come out of it, which is kind of a source of frustration for both those of us who represent municipalities who are going to try and deal with these changes in law, and also the industry, which would like to know what the rules are. So, first legal sales, January 1st, 2020. No consumption is allowed until there are legal means to purchase. I will tell you that I ride the L in the city every day, and there's plenty of people who haven't gotten this part of the memo. That said, the idea is that you may not legally consume until you have a legal place to buy legal, tested, and properly dosed and sourced cannabis. When I say actually properly packaged and dosed, it will go so far as to the edible versions of cannabis. If it comes in like a candy bar, it will be scored as if it was like a pharmaceutical or pill with a dosage amount. So you don't eat the whole candy bar and end up on your couch for 3 days, I guess. The impact of this is that there are currently 20 cultivation centers in the state. The number of those is probably not going to change. They're mainly in rural and very far exurban areas. They are large warehouse type buildings, and they tend to stay away from neighborhoods because they do actually have a pretty pungent odor to them. Even though the cannabis is not being burned, it is a rather fragrant plant. But you're not going to see those cropping up in urban or suburban areas. Dispensaries, there are currently 56 dispensaries that are operating in Illinois, that have been operating since starting in 2013 when the Medical Cannabis Act was passed and medical cannabis was made legal. Most of these dispensaries, and I don't believe that you have a dispensary in your town. Some towns, when you ask if they do, they say, do we? And it turns out they do and nobody noticed it. One of the reasons is that program actually performed very much under expectations. There were, as of last summer, only about 46,000 registered qualifying patients who were actively using the dispensaries in Illinois. As a result, they had very low impact. There was not a lot of traffic in and out of these facilities. The upside of that is that it was a pretty good dry run for the state in learning how to regulate these facilities. All of these 56 dispensaries will be allowed to apply for an early approval license to grow and sell to the adult market at their existing locations. As you may have seen in your local press, that's somewhat complicated by the fact that certain communities like Naperville, for instance, which has a dispensary, which has operated in a very kind of non-intrusive way. No one's really had any complaints about that. They were expecting that they would be able to transition to be able to sell to the recreational market. Naperville, and I cannot recall if they've actually taken a final vote on it or not, but they were definitely leaning towards not allowing it. And so that facility, if it remains in its current location, is going to only be able to sell, to basically continue its operations as is, selling to registered qualifying patients. All of these current licensees will also be able to apply for a secondary location. So every community that doesn't have a dispensary, why are we here talking? If right now, if you don't have a dispensary, this is the reason, is because if you have a dispensary license to operate one location, not only can you apply to the state to sell to adult use customers for your current location, you will also be able to apply for a secondary use location anywhere in your Bureau of Labor Statistics area. And I'm pretty sure that we're still in the Chicago, Naperville, Elgin Bureau of Labor Statistics area. And so, so long as you locate your secondary site within that, you will be able to operate. Completely subject to local regulations, though. We are not preempted. I don't know if folks were around when medical passed, if you guys were sitting on the council at this time, but the state said that we were not allowed to, at the local level, prevent dispensaries from being located in at least one zoning district. And the idea there was that this was a medical program. It was supposed to accommodate people who had qualifying conditions, and so they wanted to make sure that there was ample opportunity for people who needed it to get this. The same is not true here. We have every power to opt out. Okay, there's going to be a whole other tranche of licenses that will be issued in 2020. Those will be conditional licenses where they'll be given permission to operate, and then they go in search of a friendly place to land. And if they don't find one, then they go back to the state and ask for another 180 days. What will be allowed? Adult recreational possession and use, 21 and up. There are certain quantities you'll be allowed to purchase at any one time. Non-residents are allowed only half of these amounts. So if you have people coming in from Wisconsin or Iowa, I guess I'll have to visit 2 dispensaries. I'm not really sure how that's supposed to work. The legal sale will be allowed, and the idea is that the market would top out in Illinois by 2022 at 500 dispensaries. That sounds like a lot. Colorado currently has over 1,000. It has more dispensaries than it does Starbucks. And we have a population approximately 3 times the size of Colorado. So the state is at least looking to be conservative, looking at their possible market and how many of these they want to license. There was one aspect that was kind of surprising that we were told was not going to be in the bill, and that ended up in the bill. The good thing was that it ended up in the bill completely subject to local control, which is the idea of on-premises consumption. We were told there would not be pot cafes allowed. You would not have coffee shops. There were 3 lines total in a 600-page bill that were put in that said on-premises consumption would be allowed subject to local control and authorization. No guidance as to what that meant, no guidance as to how we would go about licensing that. In our firm's opinion, that means that we can do whatever the heck we want, including say, not at all. And I had the pleasure of speaking with the person who administers all of, for the city of Denver, all of their cannabis business licensing, and they've had that type of license available for 2.5 years. There's a grand total of 1 business that actually operates in that way. And the biggest reason is that there's no such thing as dram shop insurance for cannabis. So you can't get liability insurance for over-serving someone if you're selling cannabis. And so that's a problem that looked like it was going to be a big boogeyman and then kind of has solved itself. Okay, what will be prohibited? These are some basic rules. Some of them affect the actual businesses, some affect the use of cannabis itself. Important for you guys tonight is that no dispensary will be allowed within 1,500 feet of another dispensary. Consumption by adults, no consumption in a public place, which is any place where a person could reasonably be expected to be observed by others. So that means streets, parks, Sitting on your front porch even is not permitted. If you have a small chain link fence in your backyard and there's neighbors' kids next door, it's not permitted. Consumption on school grounds, a lot of these are very, very logical. You can't smoke anywhere prohibited by the Smoke-Free Illinois Act. Sale to minors, home delivery. Home delivery is a very big thing in some states where cannabis has been legalized. That is not allowed under the state law. So you won't be seeing people, if you decide not to sell it, allow the sale. Here in Warrenville, you won't see cars with giant cannabis leaves coming in and dropping it off. I don't know if that's a comfort for you. There's also going to be limits on advertising. Can't make any medical or health claims. Can't use images of cannabis leaf or buds. Can't use any imagery that would appeal to minors. Cartoons, bright images. It's a Joe Camel rule, if you remember how cigarettes were eventually regulated. What will be taxed? So this is going to be an extremely highly taxed product. It's a full lasagna of revenue. And when you add it all up, net taxation will be between 40 and 45% of the purchase price. There's going to be a tax on cultivation, kind of a wholesale tax of 7%. Dispensaries will have a retail tax, retail sales tax that goes to the state that is kind of on a sliding scale depending on the potency of the product. The counties will be able to impose a cannabis retailer's occupation tax. Municipalities will be able to put another 3% on top of that. And then all existing state, local, county, regional, RTA, all those sales taxes will also apply. The Department of Revenue will collect all these taxes and then remit them back with a 1.5% convenience fee, always. I'm not joking, actually, that's what the state charges. Okay, so here, this is the meat of the presentation, and I'm going to go through this relatively quickly because I know you guys have other things on your agenda, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions if you have them. Key thing, home rule is preempted. So like I said, we cannot prevent people from consuming it, people buying it elsewhere if they want to have it here. You can, although, locally outright ban all recreational cannabis businesses by ordinance. And you can pick and choose. You may say we don't want a dispensary, but maybe we feel like a processor or an infuser, someone who doesn't actually deal with any end customers and wants to be entrepreneurial. You know, in the same way that, you know, before Two Brothers had a tap room, that they just had a brewery where you couldn't go up and get beer, that this would be more of an industrial use or something. You could potentially allow that without allowing a dispensary. You can enact reasonable zoning regulations. So that means putting industrial uses in industrial areas, putting retail uses in retail areas. You can require a conditional or a special use, and what do you call them in this community, Ron? Special, okay, yes. I should check that before I do this presentation. So a special use, and a special use says that this might be appropriate in this district, but we feel that there should be certain conditions that are put upon it. And we would look at each applicant on a case-by-case basis. And what's interesting is that the statute included a very interesting phrase, that you can impose limits on the time, place, manner, and number of operations. One of the stickiest things that we're asked to do as land use and zoning lawyers is say, can we put a limit on the number of nail salons? Just no more nail salons, or no more banks. We've got enough banks. Or in the city, we have more mattress stores than you could ever imagine. Can we put a limit? And normally we say no, that you cannot put a numerical cap on a specific type of use. Under this law, if you wanted to say, yes, we will allow a dispensary and we will allow a grand total of 1, you could do that. Or if you said, you know, we have a craft grower that we think would do a good job here, we're going to allow 1, and then on a wait and see basis, we might increase that number at some other point. You can locally regulate consumption in a manner consistent with the Act. One of the things that the police chief probably has encountered, and I know that this isn't much more an issue in Cook County, where certain states' attorneys have really stopped taking on smaller possession and sale cases. They just don't want to be dealing with those. So from a local perspective, you could adopt a lot of the penalties that are in this law for sale to minors, all those things, adopt them locally, and possibly go through a local adjudication process on them. And then finally, there was one aspect which a lot of people were very concerned about when the bill was being drafted, because originally everyone in the state of Illinois who had basically an enclosed space that was under their control could have grown 5 marijuana plants. Every adult could have for their own personal use. Luckily, that didn't make it into the final bill, but that was included in an amendment to the medical bill. So registered qualifying patients will be allowed to home grow up to 5 plants. So we are not allowed to unreasonably prohibit that. As your attorney, I ask you not to ask me what a reasonable prohibition is versus an unreasonable prohibition, because I have not figured it out yet. So that's another thing that we're looking to the state for more guidance on. Okay, so the best place to start is to what is already in your code. And this does not constrain you, but it is something that you can look at when you're looking at what you did previously. And granted, this was under the law that said that you could not prohibit these types of facilities. You at least had to find some possible home. And none of them came to Warrenville in the ensuing years, but this is what your code currently says. Cultivation centers would be a permitted use in the M1 and M2 district. Dispensaries were permitted use in the M1 and M2 district, and then a special use in the B2 and B4 district. So that's what is currently in your code for medical facilities. If a dispensary wanted to open up today and still only sell to medical patients, they could come in under these rules. Okay, so I talked a little bit about these different classes of cannabis business establishments. Cultivation centers, large-scale industrial growing facilities, licensed by the Department of Agriculture. And like I said, most of these are in fields down in places like Effingham and far downstate. Craft grower, this is a smaller cultivation operation, somewhere between 5,000 and 14,000 square feet. The idea is that this would allow smaller entrants to the market who want to get into this business to set up a relatively small grow area. And they can be co-located with a dispensary or another licensed cannabis business, but they would have to receive both state licensures and then also comply with all of your local licensing. Dispensary, this is the retail operation that most people are either, depending on your perspective, interested in or concerned about. It's licensed by the Illinois Department of Finance and Professional Regulation to sell cannabis and cannabis-derived products to persons over the age of 21 and qualifying medical patients. Processors, this is a new class of cannabis business where they take the product, it's almost like a distillery, is the best way that I can explain it. They take the actual plant, they go through a chemical process involving solvents that distills down the active, psychoactive ingredients down to, it's either going to be like a resin or some sort of kind of an oil, which then can be used by the next class, which is an infuser. Take that, put it into edibles, put it into topicals. If there is a way to ingest or apply something, there's an entrepreneur looking at doing this. And there are two other classes of cannabis business establishments, a testing facility and a transporter. We don't need to worry about those too much tonight because neither of those actually have in their possession at any time anything but a negligible amount of cannabis. The transporters are vans that will take the product from processors or grow centers to dispensaries. These are basically van fleets, and they don't keep product in their truck yards at night. Testing facilities is very similar to like an underwriter's laboratory. They will take small amounts, test the product. I tell most of the communities that you probably have a lab somewhere in your industrial parks that probably has much more dangerous chemicals that they're testing. So in general, we're not worrying too much about locally licensing testing facilities. Okay, so here's what's been happening amongst other communities. And this is not an updated list because there are meetings like this happening every single night. And I try and update this, but I don't always catch up. Naperville is planned to opt out. LaGrange Park has recently decided to opt out. Lincolnwood decided to opt out. Still considering, Northbrook has sent this to their Plan Commission with a public hearing currently underway. The Village of Glencoe is discussing it at the board level. Des Plaines referred it to their Planning and Zoning Board with specific ideas as to what the City Council would be interested in seeing regulated. So they're leaning towards permitting with pretty specific regulations, but they haven't come to any conclusions yet. Highland Park is leaning opt-out, but sending it to their zoning commission. Libertyville leaning towards opt-out, but has not made a final decision. And then Skokie, I think, is one of the few that's actually gone through and approved. And interestingly enough, Skokie did something that I did not expect. They classified dispensaries as a permitted use in 2 of their commercial districts, set a hard cap on the number that would be allowed, and built into their zoning ordinance a number of operating conditions, like what you would normally see in a special use ordinance. But they basically said, you're permitted to come in here if you're one of the first 2 and you abide by every single one of these rules. And those rules were as granular as security camera surveillance, proper lighting, things that you would normally see built into a case-by-case ordinance of a special use. Okay, so this is the interactive part. This is where the kind of the decision tree occurs. Now, tonight, I don't know how far it's expected that the discussion will progress tonight. I know this is scheduled for a Plan Commission hearing, and one of the things that we've seen is that if this issue, because it can be very divisive and people have very strong opinions on either side, if sent to a planning or zoning commission without some sort of guidance, some sort of idea of where the corporate authorities are on this, I've seen it go to a zoning or planning commission, come back with a recommendation that is totally at odds with what the city council was looking to do. And so tonight, time permitting, going through some of this hierarchy of questions, which I think is only 2 slides, giving some guidance to the Plan Commission is going to make their lives a lot easier as they go through the public hearing process. Just to know kind of, giving some kind of guardrails, I guess is the best way to put it. So, issues to be considered. Do you want to allow or prohibit cannabis business establishments in Warrenville? If prohibit all of them, or just retail dispensaries? Because those are the ones that, when you talk about impact on neighbors, when you talk about people coming in from other parts of the county or other parts of the state, those are the ones that usually create the most notice, or the kind of the most problems. If allow, you need to give some guidance on appropriate zoning for these. What district would they be allowed in if you're going to allow them? Do you want to allow them by permitted or special use? Special uses, one of the things about them is that they require a public hearing. So if anyone did want to come in and establish this, they would have to come before the Plan Commission, actually present their case, take questions. The public would give their chance to give their input. The Plan Commissioners would give a chance to ask questions, and then it would ultimately come to the City Council for a decision. Would it be appropriate, if you were to allow this, to impose a cap on the number of cannabis business establishments? Like I said, you could set a maximum number here. Distance/separation requirements. The Act currently requires a 1,500-foot separation between dispensaries. The Medical Act requires a 2,500-foot separation between cultivation centers and sensitive uses like schools, preschools, daycares, parks. I'm not sure if churches are on there. But the important part is that you could also locally impose distance requirements. Many communities will impose distance requirements on liquor licenses. You could do the same thing here. You could adopt those exact same distance requirements. You could adopt more stringent ones. Hours of operation. The Act permits dispensaries to be open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. That is not a mandate that they be open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. That is the maximum permitted hours. They have to be closed for a certain period of time where they would secure their inventory. And as most communities know, very few things happen, good things happen after midnight anyway. So, so you could impose stricter or narrower hours of operation. Parking, if you're looking at parking, I would say probably apply the general parking standards for retail that you would for like a liquor store or some other comparable business. Signage, I did talk about some of the prohibitions in advertising that are baked into the act. If you have a sign or appearance review process, you could send these types of businesses specifically to undergo that. Security and lighting, I mentioned that Skokie did impose some of these. The act does impose some very strict requirements on dispensaries and other cannabis facilities. I actually toured a dispensary up in Mundelein. I talk about these about 3 nights a week, and I'd never been to one, so I got a special permission to go to one. I didn't buy anything. I don't have a card. I'm not allowed to. But I went to one, and what struck me was there were more cameras in every single room than there are actually in this room. And all those cameras are hooked up not only to closed circuit, but to an internet feed that can be tapped into at any point in time by the Department of Finance and Professional Regulation and the Illinois State Police. So there are very strict requirements about surveillance, security, inventory controls that are imposed by the state. I'm going to pause right here and acknowledge that consistent, effective, and fair regulation are not words that we put together in the state of Illinois very often. As I said, the medical program has been very well regulated by the state. We're talking about a 10-fold increase on July 1st of potential consumers. We don't know how well the state is going to scale up with its regulation. So for whatever assurance that I give you that something is in the law and something is required, you're going to take back from me with all the skepticism that the state has well earned over the past, 100 years? Okay, on-premises consumption and social use, as I said, this is completely up to local municipalities, and even if it is adopted, the chances of it becoming very prevalent, Warrenville becoming the new Amsterdam, are very, very slim for very practical business reasons. And then finally, if you are going to allow this, it wouldn't make sense to allow this if you weren't going to get any revenue, probably. So at what rate would you want to tax it? And the tax, once again, the local tax would only be on consumer sales. So if you had a non-consumer cannabis business like a processor and infuser, what you get from that, you get the property taxes and basically maybe a filled industrial space that was closed or is that vacant at this time. Okay, I talked for a long time there. I don't know, Ron or John, what you guys, how you want to kind of handle working through this, or yes, Chair.
First of all, I wanted to thank you for the information. I learned an awful lot that I didn't know before, and on behalf of the entire council, thanks for your time and your expertise. It was very informative. So I guess what we usually do, if you have time, is we usually open it up to questions from the council. Once again, you were absolutely accurate in that we will have a public hearing on September 19th at the Plan Commission meeting. That will be the public's opportunity to express their opinions. But tonight we're here to discuss it as a council and have further questions answered and get some reactions on the table. So thank you again. Are there questions any council members would like to ask? Alderman Davalos.
Thank you. In our packet, we have another section under what will be prohibited. And I was interested in that section. It looks like, talks about youth possession and consumption. And then it looks it talks about that, which
Oh,
I was interested.
I did skip over this. I think I glanced over this one, yeah.
Oh, okay, if you want to talk about that for a minute, maybe, or.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we had talked about a lot of this is the slide that I did, and this is the slide that I skipped over. So youth possession and consumption will be, unless you have a medical card, and there are certain very narrow circumstances in which persons under the age of 21 can have a medical card. There are certain qualifying conditions, including epilepsy, that certain people under the age are allowed to purchase. But if you don't have a medical card and you're possessing cannabis, it's a Class A misdemeanor, and the Secretary of State can revoke your driver's license until you're 18. Open container. So this rule doesn't change. One of the things that really didn't change were all the provisions of the Illinois Vehicle Code about DUI. This act did not touch those. Because the theory is that although it's a legal product, in the same way alcohol is a legal product, driving under the influence is not. Now, your police department is going to tell you, and they're not going to be wrong, that just because something is legal doesn't mean that they can actually, that there won't be a spike in DUI, and that there won't be a spike in illegal use. And those things are going to happen. It's happened in every state. Whether it's been a long-term increase or not, there's a lot of statistical noise that, but you will see, at least in the first few months, you're going to see probably more DUIs. And unfortunately, there is not a good field test for this right now. And by that, I mean a test that will come back with a result while the person is being detained in the traffic stop, and that is not highly intrusive from a constitutional perspective. In other words, you're not taking their blood, you're not taking their hair, there's no breathalyzer. But if there is a open container, basically, of cannabis, and all the cannabis that is going to be sold at these dispensaries is supposed to be in a sealed, odorless, tamper-evident, and cannabis container and be reasonably inaccessible. If someone is sitting there with a vape pen or a bag of leaf or an edible unwrapped on their seat, it is the same as having an open beer. So take what comfort you will from that. DUI, as I said, the actual presumption of intoxication and impairment is not changing. What's law today will be law on January 1st. There are some interesting employment issues that come along with this with regard to use by firefighters and police. They're not allowed to use it while on duty, obviously. Not allowed to use it while on call. On call is when such employee is scheduled within at least 24 hours notice by his or her employer to be on standby or otherwise responsible for performing work-related tasks. There's an interesting employment issue about this that employers are allowed to maintain zero tolerance or drug-free workplaces. At the same time, they're not allowed to take a negative or an adverse disciplinary action for someone who has consumed a legal product. This will be a legal product under state law, but not under federal law. That's another one which they didn't quite nail it in the legislation. So we're hoping that a trailer bill is going to come along and give us more clarity on that.
So this part under DUI, these nanogram amounts in blood, et cetera, that's already on the books.
That's what's in the Illinois Vehicle Code right now, and that's not changing.
What is your knowledge or rumor about something like a breathalyzer or some other test on site that a police officer could use to corroborate kind of what they're feeling, or someone's driving erratically, or however oftentimes people get pulled over or cause accidents or whatever? I keep reading that people are working on this, madly trying to get it done by January 1st, but I don't know the real facts of that.
Yeah, whoever comes up with that is going to make a lot of money in government contracts. There is not a technology that is reliable, that doesn't have false positives, that can be easily deployed, and that also would be held up in court. And this is not something that is just an Illinois problem. I mean, you have in 11 states right now, after Illinois, I think something like 40% of the American population. If New York and New Jersey go, it'll be close to majority of the American population lives in states where either medical or recreational is legal. And so this is something that hopefully technology will catch up on, but it has not done so yet.
Okay. My last question is just a clarifying question because I just confused. So these products that are they CBD, those hemp products? How does that fit into this whole thing?
Yeah, it's a really good question because CBD is something that has really fallen in the cracks. So hemp, industrial hemp, which was legalized, Governor Rauner actually signed the bill that allowed the cultivation of industrial hemp. Hemp is a related plant to cannabis. It has such minimal amounts of THC, you'd probably get black lung before you actually got high. But it is an industrial plant that's used for many other actual non-recreational purposes. CBD can be derived from that. CBD is one of probably about 12 different active chemical compounds that are in marijuana and marijuana's botanical cousins. And CBD is not outlawed by the state of Illinois. It is not scheduled by the Food and Drug Administration, nor is it a controlled substance. It's just one of those things, like if you went to GNC and you picked up melatonin. And really that's because it has pretty negligible actual effects. So if there's any claims that people are making about what they do, God bless, but none of that is verifiable.
Thank you very much.
Alderman Berry.
Is there any wording regarding the payment when you go into a location, be it retail or even medical, I guess, as to how you can pay for this?
Yeah, so this is another issue that has not been worked out. And because cannabis is a Schedule I drug, involving financial transactions across state lines would violate federal law. So what does that mean? That means you can't have wire transfers. That means that major credit card companies are not in the business just yet. That means that nationally chartered banks will not bank these businesses. Does that mean that they're sitting on piles and piles of cash in a vault, which they just sit on and then they come in and bring to pay their water bill with a bunch of unmarked bills? Luckily, no. There are a few state chartered banks in Illinois that do bank these facilities. For the actual customer transactions, a lot of it is still done in cash. There are some of these state chartered banks that are coming up with almost like a Venmo or a Cash app where people could be able to transfer funds in such a way that it doesn't cross state lines. Interestingly enough, the dispensary that I visited in Mundelein, on the sales floor, which it kind of looked like a liquor store meets a yoga spa, but there were 2 ATMs that were on the sales floor, and patients would walk in, get their money, walk 5 paces, sit down, give back their money, and I don't think it went back into the ATM, but it was kind of a hermetically sealed area of commerce. And it was unusual, and it's not what we're used to seeing. That's how that particular facility has dealt with the issue. My expectation is that there is so much money sloshing around this industry nationwide that sooner or later the major credit card companies are going to figure out a way, some sort of fix in DC so they can get a piece of this. Sorry if I sound a little cynical.
Alderman Goodman.
So last time we heard presentations about marijuana law, when the medical law was passed by the state and we passed our ordinance, the licenses were limited. I believe we were told at that time it was going to be 2 per county. So for medical purposes, will there be any equivalent license limit this time?
Yeah, so yes. And so for right now, as I said, there are, I believe that there are 56 dispensaries operating in the state right now. And I believe that at least 2/3 of those are kind of in the Cook and Collier County areas. And all of those would be able to have a second location so long as they stay in the same Bureau of Labor Statistics area. So we have a hard cap of around 60 dispensaries in the kind of northern and northeastern Illinois area. And then when we look at the next tranche that are going to be coming out, the next wave of these would be 75 would be issued in 2020. 47 of those would be allocated to the Chicago, Naperville, Elgin Bureau of Labor Statistics area. These, they're going to be allocating these according to where the people are in the state, and most of the people in the state are up here. It will not be as drilled down as it was for medical dispensaries. So that you won't have it where it's going to be in certain townships, as it was. I remember when the medical came out, we were madly like pulling township maps up, trying to figure out which of our clients were impacted. And like we had one client that was split down the middle and could have, like it was in 2 different townships, could have had 2. And so, but that level of regulation is probably not going, you're not going to see that level of granularity.
Okay, so that walks right up to my second question, which was, you've said that there's a limit of 500 total for the state, but that there are these secondary locations. So is that 500 meaning 250 licenses and 2 locations each, or 1,000 total?
No. So yeah, important clarification there. Right now there are 56. All 56 could conceivably get a secondary license. What we're seeing is that many communities are opting out, and so the one in Naperville, for instance, will not be able to get its it will not be able to get its primary license, but it may get a secondary. So you could have up to 112, it'll be less, and then basically the total number of licenses that the state is authorized to issue through 2022 is 500. And that doesn't multiply into 1,000. That just means 500 retail storefronts maximum by 2022. Now, it's just a law, it can be amended, that number could be changed, but that's the number that they feel is appropriate at this point in time without a lot of knowledge as to what the market's going to turn out to be.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions. So are you saying that the medical and recreational marijuana will potentially be able to be sold under one roof? Okay.
Yeah, and some states have approached this a little bit differently. I was under the impression that when a state moved to recreational, it would just get rid of its medical program. Why would it be necessary? And no state that has actually had medical expanded to recreational has actually gotten rid of its medical program. The biggest reason, at least in Illinois, will be taxation. Remember that 45% tax rate? For medical patients, it's going to be 1.25%. It's taxed as a pharmaceutical. So it's taxed like your Robitussin at Walgreens. And so there are going to be people who find it still to be more effective for them to remain in that program. And then also there are provisions in the law that says that every dispensary shall allocate a certain amount of its inventory to guarantee that medical patients will be able to obtain their product. So on January 1st, when there's a line out the door of people who want to try recreational, there will be some set aside for the people who have been coming for the past 3 years as medical patients. We'll see how that works as well.
Speaking of lines out the door, is there any kind of indication that you could give us as far as what to expect as far as customers per day and the amount of cash that's generated at a facility, if we, we're thinking about it?
Yeah, there have been demand studies that were commissioned by the legislative sponsors, and that's where you saw some of the numbers kind of come out when they're talking about revenue projections of possibly $750 million in revenue per year of total taxation. What that translates, and I have to go back into my binders and see what that translates into the number of individual customers, if you break it down by the amount of grams that they can purchase. I can tell you that the dispensary that I went to it on a Tuesday, midday. The parking lot was probably about 3/4 full. I saw probably about 20 people kind of come and go. I would say probably the amount of people you'd see going in and out of a Benny's. But will that either change on a per location basis? Will it be more or less? We really don't know. They tried to look at these consumption studies, and they tried to compare Colorado to Illinois. Before legalization, Coloradoans apparently smoke twice as much cannabis as people in Illinois do. So they actually had to adjust that when they were doing the numerical calculations. We tend to have an older population. Colorado's a very young population. And so we don't really know what's going to happen.
Are there any studies that have looked at property values and what happens to the residential, the homeowners and things like that allow this sort of thing?
So there has been. One of the issues, though, is that they come from each state has gone about this in a slightly different way. California legalized, but it was in about a 10-year gray zone where it decriminalized without legalizing. So they had a number of very sketchy unlicensed dispensaries, up to 2,000 in LA County alone, which they finally kind of got a handle on. Colorado was much more controlled. Washington and Oregon, the same thing. So far, the studies have not shown any correlation of the kind of secondary effects you'd see next to an adult use or some other kind of undesirable land use. But all of these studies have been done when we're looking at what's been a very large economic expansion. Property values in a lot of places have been going up generally. Has any property value in Colorado gone down in the past 5 years? Well, if it has, because of a dispensary, it'd be lost in the statistical noise. So I haven't seen anything. I have been asked that specific question, and I've looked around. Not so far.
Okay. Let's see. I wanted to ask too, when did cannabis become illegal, and was there a reason, an overall reason why it became illegal in the first place?
Oh, I heard a great talk on this, actually. Someone at the Chicago Bar Association did a wonderful talk on this about how it was legal, or it just wasn't really dealt with in our legal system until the 1920s, and that it was it was made illegal, and there was a kind of campaign that followed with prohibition, and then when the 21st Amendment came along, they kept cannabis illegal. There was also a kind of a sentiment against Mexico at the time, and there was a trade issue that it was perceived that it was being imported in the same time that we've had issues like opium was perceived to come from China, or it did. So there's a very long history about how a prohibition actually occurred. I'll send you a link.
And again, clarifying the cash and Venmo, and there's no potential for debit card use. It would be strictly Venmo or like locally established banks and things that would...
State chartered banks.
State
so
chartered
not
banks.
nationally chartered, not FDIC insured. But there are, and credit unions have done some banking for these. And the rules are definitely in flux on this. But right now, I don't want to kind of paper over this. These facilities, dispensaries specifically, have to have vaults and safes, and the safes are not just there for the product. It is for the cash. They do have cash on hand. They build these facilities out not dissimilar to currency exchanges when it comes to control and inventory control in secured areas.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Alderman Krishel?
What about restrictions to the use of the taxes collected and remitted? Would there be any kind of restrictions on the use of that tax money?
For the local taxes, the retailer's occupation tax, no. It's not like MFT or anything like that. There is actually a portion of the state tax that is supposed to be remitted back to the municipalities that would be used specifically for law enforcement support, training of drug recognition experts, which is a very involved process. I think it requires up to 80 hours of training. Technology for the types of that you were referring to, interdiction efforts and education efforts. So there would be some potential money coming from the state that would not be part of that local revenue. The local 3% minus the 1.5% of the, that would come basically back to you guys unfettered.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, I just want to quickly ask, you had a slide of what some of the other communities in the area were doing. Were those just your clients? I mean, I wonder about towns like Winfield. Well, some towns have been in the paper.
Yeah.
You know, but around us, Winfield, Wheaton, Carroll Stream, Lyle, Bartlett, Bolingbrook. Do you have anything?
I would defer to staff. I don't know if they've been
Okay.
following it a little bit more than I have.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that later. I was just,
And that's something we can have ready for the Plan Commission.
yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Are there any other questions? Mayor?
In terms of the communities making a decision for their own local control, what are the constraints there? When do we have to make a decision? What are the consequences of not making a decision? All of that, so we have an idea of a framework that we have to work within.
Yeah, this is an interesting kind of legal question. So right now, your only permitted uses, only allowable uses are medical cultivation centers, and we'll go back to the slide. Oh, I overshot it. There we go. Medical cannabis cultivation centers, which actually says perform the necessary activities to, there we go, perform necessary activities to provide registered medical cannabis dispensaries, and then cannabis dispensary organizations also for medical. So right now, these are the only uses that are permitted under your zoning code. If someone came in to Ron and said, I would like to open up a recreational dispensary, your response would be? Not listed, it's prohibited. Not listed, it's prohibited. So, and we would stand by that as your legal counsel. We feel that that is a very defensible position. But could someone come in and say, you know, we're just a regular retail use. You know, we sell plants. We fall under, you know, if you do a zoning opinion, we sell plants. So we could come in as a garden center, or we're no different than, you know, the issue is that someone could basically come in and say that we're a legal business by right, and you don't have anything in your code that prohibits us, so we should be allowed. Would we take that fight? Absolutely. Would a cannabis business probably want to get into litigation that would prevent them from opening up for 2 years? Probably not. Is a good, clear statement on this something that we advise you having in your code, whether you want to prohibit it, allow it under the strictest of conditions? Whatever way you choose, we recommend that your code address this.
And the time frame for that would be the end of the year, I trust.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's been specific interest, if you guys have received specific inquiries. Yeah. So you don't have anyone knocking on your door. You don't have anyone, literally one of my clients, they're considering their zoning code amendments, and they have a special use that is following 1 week behind to come in. And they're amenable to that particular use. You don't have that pressure. So you have the time to think about this, but we do recommend that you address it because there will be another wave of licenses that will be coming.
So it's in the community's best interest to make this decision by the end of the year.
That's what we advise, yeah.
Okay. In terms of the state, this is a 600-page statute. It's got a lot of specifics in there. It's
I've read
got
it 3 times, I know.
No comment. You have to read it.
I have to.
There are a lot of specifics in there, and there are a lot of things that are ambiguous, and there are a lot of things that haven't been determined yet, and there are a lot of agencies getting up to speed for a whole new program that they're gonna have to administer. Do you anticipate that the state is gonna be able to keep with the same program, that by the time this becomes legal, they're gonna be in a position to regulate things reasonably? Or do you think that there are gonna be some more changes that are gonna pop up in trailer bills or in interpretations that make it more difficult for us to make our decision?
There's a whole article in the Tribune, I think front page today about that.
Read that
Yeah.
only once, though.
Yes. And I had to read it twice because I sent it to everybody in my group, and then I realized I hadn't read it that carefully, and I knew they were going to ask me questions. So I think what's going to happen is that everything is going to proceed according to the statutory timelines. There's going to be fewer of these facilities than we thought there were going to be. There are going to be some hiccups that are going to happen along the way, and there's going to be a trailer bill. I would not be surprised if there's a trailer bill this fall that cleans up. There's a particular issue that's being fought over right now, whether existing dispensaries, can they move to a different location with their original license? And the dispensary in Naperville is obviously very interested in that right now. The dispensary in Chicago, which is a very small storefront, the one in Lakeview, wants to move to the former site of the John Barleycorn's Bar, which is a very large space because they want to accommodate every young person who lives in Lakeview on January 1st. That doesn't, by the plain language of the statute, that's not allowed. There will probably be something to address that. Governor Pritzker has said that he's not going to come in and weigh in on that particular issue. So yes, I do expect there to be more information coming.
And in terms of the anticipated rapid expansion of the number of these facilities, would you think that that would be followed by the inevitable contraction after a while, because there would be buying up of different groups and the ones would fail that would be undercapitalized, et cetera, et cetera? Has that been the experience in other states, that a rapid expansion has been followed by a contraction?
What I definitely have heard when I've talked to people, I've talked to some of the regulators, and I've talked to some people in the industry as well. And what they have told me is that in general, there is some contraction because there are some people who get into just like a restaurant business, who get in, they don't know what it takes to pay the bills, what it takes to schedule people, yeah, they may get bought out. There are very large players in this industry like GTI and Cresco. Cresco is based here in Illinois, they are kind of, there's a market consolidation going on nationwide. I think that Illinois is going to try and avoid the kind of boom bust by limiting the number of these, not just from a market perspective, but also from a regulatory perspective. If the medical program had been problematic, if there had been leakage of product to other states, if you had seen youth usage spike, they probably wouldn't have been able to pass this bill. So I think there's a lot of stakeholders who want this to work. We'll see.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one final question. That's the Community Director, Menser. I know we were given a list by Mr. Weiss about the questions that would be appropriate to ask and have answered for the public hearing as guidance for the Plan Commission. And I just wonder if you need any information from the council before the 19th and how we can get to those answers for you.
We don't need anything, but obviously if the city council has any initial feelings that they feel that it would be helpful to share with the Plan Commission as they undertake this public hearing process, certainly that would be welcome. I'm not sure how you formulate that, and this is more intended to be more of a informational presentation, essentially the first step in a multi-step process. The city embraces process and uses process to make tough decisions like this. The Plan Commission is scheduled to have their first public hearing on this next Thursday. That public hearing will be continued to their following meeting for additional testimony and public input and questions by the Plan Commission. If there's any additional information that the Plan Commission requests of either the City Attorney's Office or staff research, we will be gathering that information and presenting that to the Plan Commission during the public hearing process. There'll be at least 2 opportunities before the Plan Commission for the public to come and listen, learn, and provide comment, ask questions. The Plan Commission ultimately will make a recommendation to the City Council. And in the process that we've established and are recommending that the city follow in dealing with this particular issue, that recommendation will be made to the City Council. It will be discussed at a City Council meeting, most likely in late October or early November. And we're recommending from a staff perspective that the council defer any decision on that or any formal action on that recommendation to the November Community Development Committee meeting, which would be on November 11th, so that there would be another opportunity for the city council to ask questions, ask for additional information again from either staff or the city attorney's office to be gathered and provided to the city council. It would be additional opportunity for the public to provide input on the issue, and ultimately the Community Development Committee would make a recommendation to the city council on what to do with this issue. And that recommendation would be presented to the city council sometime in November with maybe a final action on how the city's going to deal with this particular issue in early December. So all in all, there's at least 6 additional public meetings where this will be discussed at between now and the end of the year, potentially 7 or 8, but most likely 6 or 7.
Thank you. So unless there's any overwhelming interest in making a comment, Alderman Davalos, go ahead.
Well, I just want to explain to the public, thank you all for coming. I know all of you are interested in finding out the information as we are up here. And it's going to be, the final acceptance of this isn't going to be until December, but the way the Plan Commission works, we as aldermen are not, they recommend that we don't really speak. We could speak at private citizens, but when I go to Plan Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals to listen to the public hearing, it's really a time for all of you to talk. And some of us are there, not all of us are there, but I'll just speak for myself. I generally don't talk at that time because I think it's time for other people to talk. So when it comes either before one of our committee of the wholes or our council meetings, as Director Menser was talking about in October and December, I would welcome all of you to come during citizens' comments and let us know how you feel, if you have feelings about this. And because I personally would like to know before we go to all the trouble of writing the ordinance and end up accepting the ordinance, I'd like to hear, even when we begin to debate when Plan Commission sends us their opinion and their recommendation, that is a good time also to speak up and tell us how you feel, because you are really important in this process. And so I just want to let you know that you don't have to wait to the very end meeting, but just continue it's all on the website. You can find out when the meetings are and everything on the city website. So I just encourage you to give us your input here at the council meeting as well as the Plan Commission meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. And again, Mr. Weiss, thank you for the excellent presentation. And with that, we'll move on along to the second agenda item, long awaited, the DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau annual presentation. And Senior Planner Natalia Domovasova will do the introductions on this topic. Natalia?
Thank you. The City of Warrenville is a member of the DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the DCVB. DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau does a lot of good things and have a lot of programs that promote tourism, and Warrenville benefits these programs in many ways. And tonight we have the Executive Director of DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau, Beth Marchetti, and she will give an overview of the programs and how things were going this year. It's an annual review, and highlight how the programs of DCVB benefit the city of Warrenville specifically.
Thank you,
Beth?
Natalia. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can
can
all
hear-
hear
okay.
you, and thank you for your patience and waiting for.
Clearly, I don't have the
this.
audience draw. Thank you again. I'm here to talk a little bit about the Bureau, the history of the Bureau, the challenges that DuPage County is facing, and the plan that we have as a Bureau to help offset some of those challenges. So I know it's been a long night, so I'm going to move quickly, but I welcome any questions at the end. So we are, hello, there I am. We are your state certified bureau, meaning that we receive a portion of the state hotel tax back on the local level. And just as we heard, there are many referendums and pieces of legislature that has gone on through Springfield in the last couple of years. So I represent the hotels. I also represent the Illinois Council of Convention and Visitors Bureaus. There has been a lot of laws that have been passed over the past couple of years, from anywhere from panic buttons that the housekeepers have to wear in the hotels, to minimum wage laws. So I am your representative down in Springfield talking to our wonderful state legislators representing DuPage County on how that impacts the hotel industry. So we are partners with all these organizations. We are an economic driver in DuPage County. We consider ourselves a form of economic development, but just in the tourism industry. And when I say tourism, yes, we know we are not the Wisconsin Dells or perhaps even Colorado, but we are a good place for group meetings. That's the bread and butter that particularly the hotels in Warrenville enjoy. They each have salespeople. Each of them negotiate with the local corporate businesses here to try to get those overnight stays. So here's a list of our supporting communities, and I'm happy to say that as 2 weeks ago, maybe you'll be interested, the Village of Lisle has joined us, so that's official now. So we've got 17 communities that are working within the destination. So it really is about the collective whole in DuPage. I know all of you have heard of Expedia and Travelocity. Those are multi-million, probably billion-dollar companies. If we're all trying to buy search engine words for travel, we're competing against each other. We're going to do much better if we collectively work together. So it's really important to talk about destination marketing as a region. So this is a little bit of a harder graph to see, but DuPage County is the second largest convention and service area outside of the city of Chicago. We rank second in visitor spend. $2.7 billion was generated in 2018. We have 16,000 hotel rooms in our area. So the third, just to give you an example, the third would be Lake County at 8,000 hotel rooms. So we have twice as many hotel rooms as the third tier of a tourism generator. So while we continue to grow, we're not growing as fast as our competitors. We're losing market share. So this is what this slide is really saying. And there's many reasons, and that's where we get to some of those challenges that we're facing in our industry. But again, I'm going to talk a little bit about our plan for what we're going to do with that. I guess the takeaway here is our hotels need to see weekend drive business. They need to see continued support of their convention bureau, us, and find new demand. And so all of that's going to take some resources and tools in our toolbox. So I talked about losing market share. I don't remember if I talked about Rockford last year, but I know several of you have heard me talk about Rockford. They were a city that has really struggled and took some of their land mass that they had and built the UW Health Center. That is a basketball facility with unobstructed views. They don't have basketball courts or hoops that sit on the floor. They come out of the ceiling, so there's complete unobstructed views. They have now become the #1 sports destination in Illinois, generating over about 100,000 room nights a year in just sports business. They only have a couple thousand hotel rooms, so guess what? They're going to Beloit, Wisconsin for their overnight stays. So this is the kind of demand that we're up against. Out of show of hands real quickly, who here has kids that have traveled to Rockford for a sports tournament? Nobody in this room. Oh, come on. Oh, thanks, John. Most of the time when I ask that question, we get a lot of hands raised. Another piece of competition that really was working against us and was signed into legislation was a convention center bill. So municipal-owned convention centers are able to get a rebate of money to help win conventions. So Tinley Park, Schaumburg, Quincy, Collinsville now have abilities to get those large conventions. Do we have a convention center in DuPage? No, but we do have some big hotels with some big space, and so we really felt like this was a law that really hurt us. And then there's the big Chicago factor. So Chicago has built, by the year 2021, they will have built 8,000 new hotel rooms in downtown Chicago. So I've been at the Bureau for 20 years. We used to enjoy tremendous compression. So when there was a big show in Chicago, we felt it out here because there wasn't enough hotel rooms to help the demand, so they would come out to the suburban market. We enjoyed great success. That doesn't happen any longer. There's enough inventory in downtown Chicago to accommodate all those large shows. Coupled with the fact, so I also want to put this in perspective, 8,000 new hotel rooms is half of the hotel rooms in DuPage County, and that's just new rooms. So if you take 8,000 times 365 days a year, that's 2.5 million new hotel rooms we're selling against. So we're concerned, and rightfully so. That slide said 4,000 there. I just want to clarify. Maybe I will. There we go. This was since 2017, so since 2014, there was another 4,000 rooms. So that's where your 8,000 rooms comes in. Last thing I'm going to talk about Chicago. So in 2010, another piece of legislation was passed, and unfortunately, I wasn't the director at the time, and I don't think we actually knew about it. There's probably a 600-page bill somewhere that I didn't read. But there was a piece of legislation passed called the Airport Departure Tax. So if a guest, let me start over. A guest coming to O'Hare Midway hops in a cab and comes out to our area, they are assessed a penalty, so to speak. It's an upcharge of their cab ride. So that money, that extra money, goes to Chicago and Rosemont to help them win big pieces of business. So when Garth Brooks launched his comeback concert tour years ago, he did so in Rosemont with a nice check written to him. So this is not a piece of legislation that we like. It hurts us, and it's not only for big conventions, it's also for smaller pieces of business, because as Chicago's hotel inventory has grown, they need to become very competitive with rate, and they are, I don't want to say desperate, but they're really trying to take business that could have come to DuPage County. So we're seeing all of these things work against us. So no, I'm not all negative. I'm going to the positive things here in just a second. So in answer to that, particularly the airport departure tax, we started a grant program that helps our hotels get pieces of business across the finish line. So we have a grant program. It's a five to seven question grant. It's super easy to fill out. We've talked to our hotels about this. So if they had a 50 room night piece of business and they just needed a little assistance, they've already done many concessions, like they've given the bus driver a free room. They've upgraded them from a suite, a one-room suite to a suite. they've done all their concessions and they still can't close that piece of business. We're trying to help them get that across the finish line. So this was called the pilot grant program several years ago, and I'm asking for consideration for next year, and I'm going to let Administrator Coakley figure that one out. But we would like to help our Warrenville hotels with this program, so we would ask for respectful consideration for maybe next year's budget to put a little bit in there to help that. It has been very successful, as you can see. We've awarded 38 grants since its inception. We've only had to put in about $91,000 into that account, but we've generated almost 30,000 hotel rooms because of this program. So we want to do more to help our hotels when they're competing against Chicago business and our friendly competitors. So despite all those challenges that I discussed, I did pull up a STAR report, and this is something that we go over at each of our board meetings. STAR stands for Smith Travel Report. It's kind of the gold standard for the hotel industry. So again, despite, and I won't get into the nitty-gritty of this because it gets quite complicated, but I've highlighted Warrenville here. This is June 2019 versus June 2018. I believe it's in your packets. So here's Warrenville at occupancy 90%. And as you can see, that's the highest in the county. So that's terrific from an occupancy standpoint. You can't see it? Okay. Okay, this says 90%. This is occupancy 2019 versus 2018. My apologies, I could have blown this up a lot bigger. Last year, you were at 86.7%. You're at 90%. Great news. This is really more for the hotels and to get into the nitty-gritty, but you're at about $106 an average daily rate. That says ADR at the top. ADR is average daily rate. So you're holding steady, and you've increased your revenue per available room. Last year was $92.39. You're at $96.07. So despite all those challenges, Warrenville did really pretty well in June. Don't like to look at this report in January, February, March, but that's everybody because we're Chicago and it's cold and it's hard to get business here. But what this really is telling us, though, is we overall, June was a pretty decent month. Warrenville is all positive numbers over here, but you can see a lot of negatives. If you can't see, I'm happy to send a link to the board, but there's a lot of negative numbers there that we haven't done as well. What I attribute Warrenville's successes is there was several pieces of business that we're going to show you. So here's just a sampling of some of the group business that we've been able to book in Warrenville hotels. And I want to go to the next slide real quick. Nope. I'll stay here for just a second. So what the Bureau does is source leads, and then we send them to our hotels. Sometimes they're booked, sometimes they don't have availability, sometimes they don't want that piece of business. These are just a sampling of some of the things we've been able to book for Warrenville just this last couple months here. Media and PR for Warrenville, we shot video there at Two Brothers, and we did a lot of social this year, Art on the Prairie. There's Instagram from Blackwell, I think that is. So we're one of the first bureaus, and I want to talk about this for just a second, that invested in this company called Stackla. Stackla is able to grab photos from everybody that's posting selfies and all the Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and all the different shots. And I can actually put in that I want outdoor images with a diverse group of people, and I can actually pull that from social and then ask those people if I have permission to use those photos. It's been a really great deal breaker or game changer for us. We've gotten 20,000 new photos. I see a smile. So I want to talk a little bit about health and wellness because that's a huge part of our brand, and I think it also fills the Warrenville's brand as well, so naturally, right, natural. So these are some of the committees that we work with, who's on our product development committee. One of the things that our product development committee wanted to do was talk about health and wellness. And it's not just the food that's driving tourism, it's wellness experiences. So this last 3 months, we've launched our Natural Wonders campaign, which talks about 11 different experiences that you can do in the outdoors that you can't see anywhere else. We've launched this campaign with the Chicago Tribune. We were on Urban Nature on WTDW, which also runs Check Please, and we were on all the Metro train cars. So there's 11 different experiences. You can print the map, and then we're working with a lot of different partners with us to help get this messaging out that this is the differential. The Conservation Foundation, the Prairie Pass, all the trails, and what we can do to really get people out there. So we realize that they're going to be here for group business, meetings, but we want them to get out of their meeting and explore our nature. Another thing that we've been able to do to help try to drive hotel weekend business is our sports commission. So in May, we launched this after 2 studies, a lot of research. We really need to get a toolbox of resources that we can help with bid fees. So if we're not armed with bid fees, other people are. Bid fees are a organization wants to bring their sports tournament to our area, they'll say, I need a $50,000 bid fee. What? Well, that's the norm now. And if we don't have it, they're going to go on to the next city or the next town and go to Indianapolis, and we lost that. So it's the nature of the beast, I guess, right now. So one of the things that we were able to accomplish this year was the Triple Crown. So we took a race that has been in DuPage County. I'm going to get into bid fees here for just a second. We took a race that had already been in DuPage County 2 of the 10 days, Glen Ellen and Elmhurst, and added an extra day, Lombard, and called it the Triple Crown and marketed it that way. Got a lot of pickup from that, a lot of PR, a lot of press. And I know one of the hotels from Warrenville wanted to come out and be in our tent, be in our sponsored tent. We covered that cost. She was able to woo that rights holder, and I'm happy to say that Warrenville for 2020 is going to get 115 rooms from a race that's on the other side of the county. So this is where the Bureau puts all those pieces together and really tries to deliver different things throughout the county. This is a great win. The reason they wanted to be here was that you had the bike trails. You had where they wanted to be. These communities did it. So I'm really proud of that success story. For the Tokyo Olympics, proud to say that the weightlifting event, the road to the Olympics, will come right here through DuPage County in Lombard. So we don't have lots of fields and different sports venues that we'd like to have. So we took a ballroom, we laid flooring on it, so when they lift and they drop dead weight, it's not going to crack the flooring. This is a great win for us. You have to be really creative with what we have. We don't have some of the venues that we'd like to have, so we were able to do this. This is the 3rd in a series of weightlifting events. This has gotten so much bigger because we've been able to host this that we think that the hotel rooms will spread throughout. So really good win for the area. Another demonstration of weekend business that we're trying to drive for our hotels. Another thing that we met with staff a couple weeks ago, besides sourcing leads and sending leads to our hotels, our sales team is really committed to getting out to the hotels on a couple times a month and saying, what do you have? What do you have in your funnel as a salesperson that we can help with? We're not going to spread it to anybody else. We want to be able to help you. And so having those personal touches with the hotels, I think, will also assist them in getting that across the finish line. This is, I know one of the things that we talked about years ago was how do you capture all the hotel rooms? We can do it from a group business, but we have a harder time with leisure. My mom and dad love to come up from Champaign. They don't want to go anywhere near Chicago. They like this area, but how do I count them when I'm counting my hotel rooms? This is a game changer for us as well. This is called Meeting Max. We probably won't do this for things like just leisure guests for the weekend, but what we can do it for is Frida Kahlo. So rather than get into the whole wonderful exhibit, if our hotels are going to work with us, all 6 of the Warrenville hotels, to put together Frida Kahlo packages. Frida's exhibit is coming to the College of DuPage next year. You've probably all heard about it already. We're trying to have something very special in all the hotels that you can only get by staying in a hotel. I don't even want to say it out loud because someone's going to, but maybe it's a Thai beanie baby that's Frida inspired that is only in DuPage County, something like that. But that Meeting Max will be able to capture those hotel rooms and will offer those hotel packages out for the public consumption. So I went right past the international business. These are just a few of the groups that we've welcomed. We have a person dedicated to the international business. It's a very expensive business for us to be in, so we don't really travel overseas. We go to California or to New York when those travel tour operators are here, and they pick Chicago, and then they are interested in DuPage County because obviously we're less expensive than the city. So we've been able to convert a lot of the international travelers to here as well. There's more to do. It's an expensive market. We do what we can with the resources we have, but it's been very successful. And they like limited service hotels because they're less expensive. So we'll be continuing to push them out to Warrenville. That's all I really had. I'm very able to answer questions that you might have.
Well, thank you very much.
I didn't show my video, but please look at Natural Wonders. It's pretty cool.
Will do. Are there questions from the council members? I guess not, but Mayor has a comment.
Having been on the board now for several years, I have to say that I never really appreciated how complex, complicated, sophisticated what you do is, and how we could never do that for ourselves and our hotels. This regional approach, the new ideas, the competition that you face, the restrictions that you face on the money that you get from the state, the necessity of looking always for new resources. I'm very, very impressed with what you do. Again, we could not do this for ourselves. I know our hotels appreciate it. The personal attention that they get, we wouldn't be able to give them. My appreciation, I guess, is born of the fact that I've seen it from the inside now. I understand. You know, from the outside, you say, oh, good, you talk us up and everything. Well, there's a whole lot more to it than that, and it's far more sophisticated. And I might add just a ton of acronyms that I would have never dreamed that I would understand.
That you now know, yes.
Now I know a few of them anyway, but your agency does a terrific job for hotels, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I know one of the issues that we've talked about with the Warrenville hotels, and I think by having Lyle be working with us now, one of the pieces of business that I did show you was from Aurora. So when Aurora has all those great fields, we want to make sure that we're getting I don't want to say the leftover, but the lead that when they can't fill those rooms, they do send it to us. And so one of those, you probably saw it on the bottom, there was an Aurora piece of business. So I think as we continue to make sure that we're good stewards and good partners, that will continue.
Well, and that was, I think, one of the fears that our hotels had, that Aurora, Lyle, and Naperville were going to combine and provide additional intensity to the competition that we already feel from Naperville, who has their own tourism bureau, and they're very effective at marketing their community, and they basically do not cooperate with the rest of us. They don't play well in the sandbox, so to speak. So another reason that we need a voice that's consistent and proficient in what they do, and that you provide that for us.
Thank you very much.
I have one quick question. With the success you've had dealing with the Triple Crown, have you thought about raising it a bar to the Quadruple Crown? With, Winfield has a criterium that's part of their, some good old days or whatever. I noticed a lot of bikes whipping around Winfield last weekend. I just wonder whether you've reached out to them.
So the Sports Commission, I think, will be a huge success for us. That was the intelligentsia folks that kind of dictate what that race is. So I'd have to find out what their race is versus, because this is new to me too, with the amount of sponsorships and rights holders the bike tires are this thick, I mean, there's a million different races out there. So that will be something that our dedicated sports person, Justin Roach, would be responsible for doing. So I'm sure he's very aware of Winfield's race. But yes, I think there's opportunities there. And that's the beauty of getting all of us together and talking about those trails and what does that look like. It's been a very interesting experience for us to try to sell that to the visitor. And I'll tell you a real brief story. You might be in the forest preserve, and you might know this more than anyone, but you might need a permit for your dog, and over here you don't. Over there, the surface is limestone. Over there, it's paved. So how do you sell that to a visitor? Like, you can ride your bike here, but then you have to cross the parking lot. And so those connectivity things are so important. I know Winfield's got a new one that opened up. But all of that is so important when you're trying to talk to the visitor, because they want to know, hey, I want to go in a loop and I don't want to have to veer off and try to figure it out. And nothing ruins a good view like a sign. So we want to be very respectful of the conservation part of that, but yet make it easy to visitors. And this has taken a lot of brain power to get that kind of mastered and going.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation. Oh, we have a question from Alderman Goodman. Go ahead. And one over here. Alderman Goodman?
Thank you. I really appreciate hearing your presentation and your perspective. And I remember, years ago when you first came to us and talked about Warrenville joining the DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau, we had managers from our local hotels here talking about how valuable this was going to be for them. So I'm just wondering, I know you come every year and give this presentation. I'm wondering if there's a way we could get a little bit of feedback from them about what they think about how you're doing and what their ideas are. I know that the mayor participates in this conference, but from the council's perspective, it would just be, I think, valuable maybe for me, maybe this is just my own personal thought,
I agree.
to hear from them once in a while about what they think of how well you're doing.
I was actually going to invite a couple of the hotels with me tonight. We had a county meeting that came up this afternoon, but I would like that as well, because I think it's important to hear the voices of the leads they receive, and if they're qualified, and what else we could be doing to help them. So I know that was a concern. I think, we have some ways to overcome that, but it is helpful for everyone to know you generate a significant amount of hotel tax every year, and as a home rule community, you can do with it, and the hotels want to be able to express to you how important it is to still use a portion of that for tourism. So
Yes.
Thank you for what you do invest in, and I do appreciate that, and I'm sure they do as well. So I will take that into consideration for next year and have them come. Or we do meet on a quarterly basis with the hotels.
Sure, or even if you just want to collect their remarks, bring them along, pass it along, have
Sure.
the mayor bring, I don't need them to come to more meetings. That can be very inconvenient for
Yes.
business people.
Right.
But they're here in the community, so they see what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, and they work with you directly, so they see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and I feel like their perspective would be helpful.
Thank you. I will definitely ask them to join me next time I'm here.
Thank you.
Great. Well, again, thank you for the informative presentation. Alderman Davalos has a question.
Yeah, I just want to clarify our vote tonight. So we're already a member of the Visitors Bureau, but we're just voting to resubscribe to the grant program. That's what's happening here?
Well, that's the next agenda item, so this was just the annual report presentation
Okay,
that was
okay.
delivered to us. So we'll move on.
Oh, sorry.
If there's no other comments, we'll move on to item number 3, which is consideration to rejoin the DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau DuPage Tourism Grant Program for fiscal year 2020. And City Administrator John Coakley will introduce this topic and give us the details.
Thank you. Beth just did a good job in the middle somewhere in there of describing the grant program and the value, so I'm not going to retouch on that. In addition, in your packet has some of the discussion back from calendar year 2016 about joining the program for fiscal year 2017, which the City Council did approve. That was the pilot program. Somewhere we had a minor miscommunication. I lost the point that the pilot program became an ongoing program. So when the pilot program ended at the end of our fiscal year, we just didn't budget it again. And recently, a few months ago, there was a question about possibly having a grant, and I expressed great surprise that we were still in the program, but Beth and I have talked quite a bit about that. And they do have quite a ongoing, the DuPage, the wording is in the packet here, the tourism grant program, which now the city of Warrenville did not budget for. I can't see any reason that we wouldn't want to continue participation in that program. In fact, I am recommending that you authorize money to come out of this year's, there's plenty of money in the hotel tax fund. I'm asking that, recommending that $5,000 be allocated for this current fiscal year. We'll need a budget amendment, even though it's a very small amount, that's a separate fund, and for those, we do budget amendments. And additionally, then we would present it in an ongoing basis for future fiscal years. We did, back in fiscal year 2017, there was, as far as I'm aware, there was one grant that was authorized, and it was successful. It was just to help get some business here. I think it helped underwrite the cost of the transportation out to DuPage so we can compete with all the folks that Beth was talking about. If our hotels, we take that out of the money that we generate through the taxes that we get from hotel stays, and it helps to support the hotel stays, so it generates more money. And then we use that for our local festivals and events, which in turn encourages people to come and stay in the hotel. So there's I think a win-win-win in that whole scenario. And I will note too, it is a matching grant program, so once it goes through the vetting process at DCVB, the unique thing about this is it's a very short time window that they need to respond, because this is a business decision that all these event planners are making, and this whole thing that we don't all want to see the background work on that. But it's a very quick decision-making, so DCBB will get it, vet it. They will contact me as your city administrator, and I will have to decide then at that point if that's going to happen or not. $5,000 would be the total that would be budgeted or allocated this year with the budget amendment, but that wouldn't be given all, I can't imagine, to any one group. Last time I think it was a $500 grant or some more small amount like that. It's just to make it that much more competitive so we get the business out here instead of it going someplace else over, it might be $20 a room stay or something that might make the difference. So that's the kind of thing we're thinking about, or we're talking about, and our staff, not only I, but our Community and Economic Development Director and our Senior Planner, all that work closely with our local businesses and the hotels and DCVB, are making a recommendation that you recommend the council go ahead and approve this. Thank you.
Are there questions from the council? Alderman Goodman?
So looking at the grant fund guidelines and pilot program description, it says communities that do not financially support the DCVB will be assessed a $150 administrative fee per actualized lead. So since you say that there was sort of a gap in the program where we weren't participating, but we were approached with a grant applicant, what happened there? Were we charged anything?
You've always been participating. That was for communities, that list of, I'll let you talk to an administrator,
But is this about being a member of the DCVB or about being a member of the grant program?
You have always been a member of the DCVB since 2015.
Right.
There was a little miscommunication that we didn't know if there was money allocated for the grant. So I don't know that we had a lot of applications during that time, or we would have found this little glimpse a little bit earlier. So it's just allocating a little bit of money that if we did have a request from a hotel that we could utilize that. Those are for that assessment that you're talking about is for communities that don't support the CVB.
Okay, so that's people who aren't in DCVB at all?
Right.
Nothing to do with the grant program specifically?
Right.
Okay, just clarifying that. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Are there other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion. Alderman Wilson?
I'd like to recommend that the City Council authorize the city's participation in the DuPage Tourism Grant Program on an ongoing basis, beginning immediately, and allocate $5,000 for this program in fiscal year 2020 from the Hotel Tax Fund.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further comments, we'll go forward with a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you again
Thank you very much.
for all that you do on behalf of Warrenville. Okay, the next item is consideration to reserve a portion of the residential developer cash contributions for the city's park purposes, and City Administrator John Coakley will again provide us with the information on this item. John?
Thank you. We'll try to be real brief on this, and then we can have some discussion. And just to preface the whole conversation, this is informational tonight. We're not looking for a decision, and we are working, staff and your representatives of the City Park Task Force are working and communicating with the Park District on this. I've had a couple of conversations with the Executive Director about this matter, and I'll get to a couple other points in a moment. Our city code for decades has included a requirement that new residential developments in the community must provide either land or cash in lieu of land for schools, libraries, and parks. We're not talking about schools and libraries tonight because the city has, we support them, we love them, we're in great districts, but we don't have any real role in either of those, education or in libraries. We do, however, in parks. The city was providing park space and trails before the Park District was even in existence, and we still have an excellent partnership with the Park District. And this whole point is nothing except a way to help fund some additional community parks and trails in the town. Isn't intended to take anything away from our Park District, which has provided excellent service and has grown tremendously in the 21 years I've been here. As I mentioned, the city has its own parks and trails. I'm sorry, let me back up a second because I sidestepped something. The city code requires all new residential developments to provide that cash for or land for park space. Most developments, like the former Musselman property that Earhart is developing, Stafford Place next door, it's really too small to have any kind of park space there that would be real useful for the community. So they have donated, they're giving a contribution of money that's required based on a formula in the city code. The number of bedrooms that they have, it anticipates based on formulas that the council has approved, the city has reviewed, and we do periodically. How many people we expect to come out of each home, and there's, again, a whole formula that crunches numbers, and when you mill all that out, it comes out to X dollars. In your packet, there is information also, I should have added, that is based on, I changed it a little bit around, but it's based on information that Ron Menser had provided to me about possible needs that we would have, but it also includes the table and the formulas if somebody really wants to look at how those are generated and how we come up with these magic numbers on what is the impact of a new residential development. And that is why those contributions of land or money is given to the community, because every new residence has some kind of impact, especially large subdivisions such as Summer Lakes was back in the day, or even an apartment complex or a Cantera Village or those kind of places. They have an impact. We don't want to have all the space built out wall to wall. That's not a very good community we wouldn't want to live in. We enjoy open space out here, certainly. And this is a way that we have helped the fund those open spaces, parks and trails and recreational spaces in the community. Before the Park District, the city used that money for some of our facilities. As I recall, before I even started, we used some of the money. Most recent case for the city was in Cerny Park with some of the development and work that was done there in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. Since that time, most of the money that I think all of it in about the last 20 years has been given to the Park District or has been used in combination with projects that we have worked on with them. As you're all aware, there's a large amount of new residential development that is coming into our community. It has been approved. Some of it is being constructed as we speak. It will bring with it a lot of revenue that goes for these parks and spaces. To my knowledge, all of them, none of them, correct me if I'm wrong, we have the two key staff people here, have contributed land for public park uses. They have their own recreational amenities within those facilities, especially the rental units. But they are contributing the cash in lieu of land. There's going to be a sizable amount of money, and that information is also in Director Menser's email that's in the packet, that gives what the projected revenues are based on the approved developments. So this isn't estimated at this point for most of those projects. It is a sizable amount of revenue that's coming in. The Park District will have and has had and continues to use some of those funds for their purposes, but the city has identified its own recreation and park space and trails projects that are either in some part of the planning stages or are close to being, I would say, realized through different means. Again, those are listed in the packet. What the point of bringing all this up tonight is that as the money's coming in, we will all do what we do and look for projects to utilize that money for. The concept that was staff has been discussing for about a year now is that we have these large trail projects. We have the Prairie Path trailhead projects that will be right out here across the street. On the Prairie Path, which is a large cost, we have some grants for that. We have some other funding from other groups, but there is some other money that we would need to contribute. This is a possible source of some of that money for legitimate purposes, why it was statutorily created in the first place, why the city council at one time adopted that, for community parks and recreation space. There's also the possibility, and this isn't a secret, the negotiations and details are not public, but that the city might either acquire the Citgo property or might partner with an owner to develop the floodplain area, some of the space that's not largely usable for commercial redevelopment as park and open space. We've had that on our plans and talked about that since, I'm not even sure how far back, at least I think a decade or so ago. And we've talked about it even recently. There's also intergovernmental agreements with the Forest Preserve District to have space, and we have some easements from private landowners between Warrenville Road and Warrenville Grove, and Warrenville Grove up to the Prairie Path to try to develop river trails and paths which could use funding. We're not excluding the Park District on any of these things. In fact, we've gotten their input. They haven't felt they were able to partner with us in a big way. We would love to help guide them into developing them and running and maintaining them. At this point in time, that hasn't been something they're looking at doing. But if the city is going to go ahead with these, this is some possible source of funding besides other funding that we would put in or grants, et cetera. In 2018, I talked about the city code requires these contributions for community parks and recreational spaces. In 2018, the city did intergovernmental agreements with the 3 applicable districts, school, library, and park. And the park district is unique in that it called out the very concept of what I'm talking about. There's a section in there that says the city council may determine from time to time, I'm not getting the exact wording, that it may reserve some money for its own park and recreational spaces. We talked about when that intergovernmental agreement was being drafted, I met with and spoke with the executive director at the time to make sure he knew that was in there. They were well aware of it when it got adopted. The park board had to pass it. The city council adopted it as well. And we had city park task force meeting, 1 or 2 at the time, and I wanted to make sure that that was pointed out so this is never going to be a surprise. We do everything in public anyway, but I wanted to make sure that they know if the council decides to do this, they're aware of it ahead of time, and we're not pulling any surprises on anybody because, again, we have an excellent partnership, working relationship with them, and we wouldn't want to do anything to undermine that. The details of what the expenses that we're looking at and the projects that the city is, the council has approved the concepts of these, not the projects per se yet. Some of the design work, the trailhead is the one that's furthest along in its design. And there are some large costs there. So if the council is amenable to this, I want to make sure if the city is going to do this, that we let everybody know. If in fact you do eventually adopt the staff recommendation to reserve 35% of the money going forward for a period of 5 years, that's our recommendation. Not all the money, but 35% of the money. So as it comes in, we'd set 35% aside, use that for city projects. The rest of the money would be available for the park district to apply for or something else that might come up. I don't know where that would come from. More likely than not, 99% for sure, it would be the park district. They would have that money accessible for legitimate projects that they would apply for. It has to meet criteria. They can't just ask for the money and it sits in an account until they find a project. They have to have something that they're going to spend it on and do it in a reasonable amount of time under the law, our city code, the statute, and the intergovernmental agreement. But I wouldn't want to have them come in and ask for a large amount of money and say, oh, by the way, we just decided, we forgot to tell you we want to take some of that for city purposes. So I think it's fair and reasonable to let them know up front, we don't have any bills for any of this work right now that we would apply it to. But Riverview West has already paid their contribution. As of July, we had from the Earhart Development and a few other things in town, there was about $17,000 that had built up over time, and the Park District had a need, so that money was distributed. That intergovernmental agreement makes it not quite, but almost an automatic process. When they apply and meet the basic criteria and go through a process, I'm authorized to go ahead and tell the finance director to release the money. Now there's over $1 million in that account, and it's a good time to speak up if we're interested in reserving some of that money for the city purposes so that everybody knows what's happening with that money. There will be substantially more money coming in as the other 3-4 developments start to pull permits. Again, that's all written out in the packet, but there will be a projected, if these all build the way they are approved and planned, and unless something happens to the economy, we don't know why they wouldn't, there is over $3 million that will eventually be there. Again, there's projects that will benefit the community that the city is looking at doing. We will partner in whatever way we can with the Park District. We'll be talking about that again. Originally in the packet, I think we changed it. We were supposed to meet with the City Park Task Force tomorrow night to talk about this, so the timing was nice. I could check in with the council first, and then we could talk with our partner government about it. We had to postpone that meeting because of some schedule conflicts, really on both sides. So we're trying to meet again. It'll probably be November now. So there's no urgency to making any decision, but I want to let you know where we're thinking and get some feedback on it before we go and talk to other governmental bodies about money that the city's collecting. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, and of course, Ron and Natalia are here as well if we need to chime in on that zoning issues.
Alderman Davalos.
Yeah, I just need a clarifying question. So your table with all the developments that has the total of $3,324,000, that's the total. So you're talking about taking 35% of that, which is your number over here, 1,156,000. Is that right? Kind of right, close to being right?
Is correct. Most of these are approved projects. Some are still in the works, like Warrenville Horizon does not have their final planning, so that could change. But yes, that is the plan.
So
We
this
would
is
take
all
it as it comes in, not taken in advance or anything.
So this is all probably we'd be asking for out of these developments, right? That would be the 35%.
Yes.
Okay. And because a lot of this money, I would think the Park District, because of a TIF, they're going to be losing, not getting quite as much over the next 23 years, which is why this is a really great deal that helps all those taxing bodies, not just the Park District. So we're just just the 35%, right? Okay, thanks.
Clarification from City Administrator.
Thank you. Yes, there is one point on that I didn't make, I neglected to make, is that the money is required to be used for capital, either purchase of land, which is cash in lieu of land dedication, or it can be used for certain types of capital improvements, like building park equipment on top of an existing piece of property. But you can't pay staff or buy new vehicles or something operational. It has to be for land acquisition or capital type purchases under the statute and our city code.
Alderman Goodman.
I was looking at these numbers and I saw that the 35% seemed to have come from taking these 3 projects and just dividing it by the amount. Were there other projects that you considered including in this list that are less definitely known? For example, I know that discussions have been had about, and I don't exactly know the legal interpretation of which projects can count as recreational trail use and so on. But for example, the Mac Road Trail is another trail that we're working on. We've discussed putting sidewalks along 59, including some paths that were discussed and we've said we haven't had funding for instance, a path between Fox Hollow and Maple Hill, a path between Country Ridge, a sidewalk along 59 from sort of the Burger King up to River Oaks, other trail connections down in the south parts of town that are on the bicycle and pedestrian sidewalk plan, but aren't expected to be built anytime soon. I guess my question is just, what did you consider? Are any of those sorts of things eligible for this?
We did not incorporate the costs of any of those other projects into the amount of funds we were proposing be reserved from the city's perspective. And it's not, the law is not black and white. It's not perfectly clear on where that line is, what you can use the funds for. It's somewhat gray. There hasn't been a lot of case law on it, but in the conversations I personally had with the city attorney's office leading up to tonight's meeting and the recommendations that the staff is bringing forth to you, the city attorney was pretty clear that there needed to be some fairly clear, these are my words, I mean, they use a lot more legal terms, uniquely attributable and other things, but there needed to be some clear benefits and connections between the improvements that would be proposed to be funded by the park donations and the projects that would be paying those funds. So things like the trailhead project, would be the only trailhead in the city of Warrenville. So the thought process behind that is that you could say that all of the residents in all these new developments there would be some benefit to them. They're not going to go to another trailhead somewhere else closer by or be served by another trailhead. The public park, the riverfront park that's being contemplated down in the Citgo property again is somewhat of a unique park amenity that isn't readily available, at least in the city of Warrenville, and the nature that's being considered at this location. And therefore, the attorney felt we could make a legitimate defensible argument that these park funds could be used there, and all of the new residents that would be taking up occupancy in these projects would be served by that particular project. Now, can you maybe make an argument that some of these other trail connections might meet that standard? You might make that argument. I can tell you that some of them, just sidewalks along 59, based on my conversation with the attorney, they're probably going to say it's not a sidewalk fund. It's, for park and recreation purposes. Now, the sidewalks might provide some connection to park and recreation functions, but really aren't a park and recreation function in and of itself. So we felt in bringing this forth that this was reasonable. That doesn't mean that at some point in the future, staff won't come back to the city council and say, hey, we've got another project that we're getting to the point where it makes sense to advance, or there's interest from the council to advance, and this might be a funding source for that future project, especially after we have a conversation with the park district and have a better understanding of what they're trying to accomplish with the funds that do get distributed to them. At this point in time, we really don't have any clear understanding or knowledge of what the projects that they might be looking to fund, that obviously if they're looking to do them, they think it's going to have a benefit for the community also.
Okay, thank you.
I would also, I guess, mention that I think the history of this donation was that they understood that the best laid out communities have certain percentages of open spaces interspersed within the population. They never came up with ratios of a number of acres per population numbers, but they do understand that parks intermixed into communities reduce crime, they improve air quality, they reduce pollution and everything like that. So I think the initial startup of this program was to establish recreational land space where it wasn't being planned for otherwise as a result of the developments that were going in. So it was, my understanding was that it was kind of funding that went back to the body that was in charge of open space and recreational operations to purchase land so that there wouldn't be constricting populations on top of each other so that there would be that breathing room and the reduction of crime and all the good things that parks and open spaces bring when you purchase them. That land developers would maybe provide, if they didn't give the donation, they would give a very small lot within their development, whereas when they give the donation, it enables a group like the Park District to build that dollar amount so that they can do more with the land space, because the land space is stronger and better for the community in large blocks or large sections. So I guess, I lean toward, partnering with a group that, manages land, recreational land in the community, and that would be the park districts, and figure out where our gaps are, where we need, parks if we do, or utilizing it for acquisition, something like the Citgo property or something like that. But keep in mind that this money, in my opinion, was originally intended for purchase of land space, not projects. And I think we kept hearing projects and things like that, trails and so forth. And I'm the biggest proponent of the trailhead. I understand that that's really important, but we are doing pretty well on the funding and the grant applications that we've received, and we have the land already acquired for the trailhead. So I guess of all these projects, I really favor, the purchase of additional land space, in the floodplain areas and the Citgo property for recreational and passive use. The other thing is, I think trails and sidewalks and things have the advantage of getting ITEP funding through transportation dollars and things like that. So those are my thoughts and comments on this issue. Anyone else? Okay, that was an informational item, and we'll gather more thoughts on that as we move forward. The next item on the agenda is consideration of the establishment of a local complete count committee for the 2020 census. And Senior Planner Natalia Domovsova will introduce this topic.
Thank you. The U.S. Census is coming up, and it's scheduled to take place in April 2020. The goal is to have every single person counted, and it's important not only for statistics and accurate data. This data is actually used for the municipalities to receive the state shared revenue. Over the last 10 years, between the decennial census, Warrenville received approximately 1,600 per counted person, Warrenville resident. So it's important to make sure we have everyone counted. And while the U.S. Census Bureau has a very extensive program of reaching out and delivering the message to the public, the local efforts are really critical here. And it's important to reach out to, first of all, define those hard-to-count population groups in the community and be able to deliver the message and reach out to these groups. And U.S. Census developed this model of complete count committees. It's basically a venue that allows to define a local hard-to-count population groups and develop a strategy of reaching out to these groups. And from staff perspective, we recommend that Warrenville does create its own complete count committee and leads this effort at the local level. The committee would include City of Warrenville staff person to coordinate the effort, and would include one of the elected officials on that committee, as well as key partners. And key partners would be Warrenville Public Library, a great resource, Warrenville Park District, Wheaton Warrenville School District representative, representative from Bauer and Johnson Elementary Schools, and also representative from local churches and businesses that have direct interaction with some of the minority groups in Warrenville. So staff recommends to authorize, the city council authorize us to create a complete count committee for the city of Warrenville, and also assign one of the city council members to participate in that committee.
Okay, thank you for the information. Are there any questions, or would anyone care to volunteer for the complete count committee? How soon do you need a decision? We were just requested to maybe think about it for a while.
Well,
How soon do you need an answer?
the committee it's a temporary committee. Obviously, it would be ideally established sometime in October and begin work immediately between October and April 2020. So the time frame from October to approximately January would be taken for developing a strategy of defining those hard-to-count groups and developing strategy of reaching out and coming up with the list of activities that will follow. And then sometime beginning January through April is the actual implementing that program. As far as time commitment, probably I'm thinking at least maybe once a month type meetings, and then correspondence.
So we're talking about 6 meetings in the time period of over 6 months.
Yes, approximately.
Okay. Anyone have an interest? Alderman Berry. I saw you. Okay, I think we have a council representative that has been, that has volunteered. Alderman Berry, does anyone have any objections, or would anybody like to put forward a motion? Alderman Goodman?
I will make a motion to recommend that the City Council, 1, authorize staff to form and coordinate the efforts of a Warrenville Complete Count Committee for the 2020 census, and 2, designate Alderman Berry to serve on the committee.
We have a question from Alderman Berry. Go ahead.
My only issue is the timing of these meetings and stuff, because I work full-time, so
And yes,
I'm just thinking of that after I.
Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I mean, I wouldn't mind backing you up in the daytime, but maybe you only want one person, right? I thought about that. You'd be so good.
yes,
Oh, thanks.
I think it's a good idea to either have a backup person or actually be there together. We will try to accommodate the night meetings. I mean, from the staff perspective, it's not a problem. We'll have to see how the other
Right.
participants will look at that.
Okay, I'm still willing to do that, and if there's an issue with the library or the schools or the other churches or whatever, then we can work something out.
And I don't mind being the backup.
Okay.
Just would the motioner want to include an alternate in the motion?
I'll amend my motion to say designate Alderman Berry to serve on the committee and Alderman Davalos to serve as her alternate.
Does seconder agree?
There was no second.
There was no second. Oh, that's correct. Second. Okay, we have a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries, and thank you for volunteering, Alderman Berry and Alderman Davalos. Appreciate your interest and enthusiasm for this. Thanks. Okay, consideration of an amendment of differential tap-on fee ordinance number 1395. Senior Civil Engineer Christine Hocking will provide us with the details on this. Christine?
Good evening. In May of 1995, City Council approved a differential tap-on fee for the Butterfield Road Sanitary Sewer Extension Project. This differential tap-on fee would require a fee for a number of the benefited properties as outlined in Exhibit A. The black dotted line is the extension, the Butterfield Extension project that we are talking about. The gray are the benefited properties underneath that ordinance. In 2016, we hired Engineering Enterprises to perform a water and sanitary sewer study of the Southwest District, and they identified that the most efficient way to serve a number of the properties in the Southwest District was to develop a extension to the Landon Avenue sanitary sewer, which is shown as the green dotted line in the exhibit. A number of the benefited properties under the original ordinance would now be connected to this Landon Avenue extension sanitary sewer, and the fees would then no longer apply to those properties that I have clouded in red in the exhibit in your packet. Staff is recommending that we amend this ordinance to remove those properties outlined in red from the differential tap-on fee requirement under that ordinance.
Questions from the council? Alderman Davalos.
I am so sorry. I am really not understanding this very clearly.
Okay.
So I understand the Landon sanitary sewer.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the properties that were in the Butterfield one. So what you're saying is everything in red won't ever pay tap-on fees?
They will not pay tap-on fees because they will never go to the Butterfield Road sanitary
But they'll pay
sewer.
tap-on fees to Landon.
They will, so there's a number of properties that are located within that red clouded area, including Lexington Trace, Everton, and some other properties that haven't been developed yet. For Lexington Trace, as part of the Duke Parkway project, we had an IGA with Duke Realty they installed actually the sanitary sewer along Duke Parkway up Barclay Avenue to eventually help serve Lexington Trace. As part of that IGA, there was I believe it was called like a surcharge ordinance, where Lexington Trace would have to pay back Duke Parkway for the construction of the sanitary and water to their property. So they won't be paying any fees to the city because we didn't build that portion of the sanitary sewer or water main to the property. So they would be paying back essentially Duke for that. For Everton, the normal tap-on fees for the buildings and et cetera would apply. They weren't included in that Duke Parkway IGA. But yes, none of those properties under this amended ordinance would pay this differential tap-on fee. They would pay our normal, except for Lexington Trace, our normal tap-on fee.
So the differential tap-on fee is different than the...
Yes, it's an extra fee that when this whole sewer was put in place in Butterfield Road, the city council approved a different ordinance allowing for these extra differential tap-on fees to be assessed for certain projects similar to the Butterfield Road.
So they're already paid?
So
those people have paid?
So when the properties that are in gray tap or connect to the sanitary sewer, that's when they pay these differential tap-on fees. So any of the properties along Butterfield Road that have connected to the sanitary sewer, we're supposed to pay this differential tap-on fee.
Okay. So everything in the red except Lexington will pay some sort of tap-on fee? But they'll pay it to Landon instead of Butterfield?
They'll pay our normal
fees? Okay.
Fees, correct.
Okay, so only Lexington Trace isn't paying our normal tap-on fees?
Correct.
Thank you.
Alderman Ashour?
on the portion to the west and the south side of Butterfield Road, are they paying a proration back to Duke? Or are they just taken out of any extraordinary tap-on fees?
So the properties on the south side of Butterfield, west of Route
Right.
59. So other than the Lexington Trace properties, those will no longer pay the differential tap-on fee under this ordinance, but they are not part of the Duke Parkway IGA.
So they just escape without paying any differential where that remains in place for everybody else?
So with those properties, specifically the ones off of Briggs Avenue, there currently is no sanitary sewer in that location. Currently, the sanitary sewer stops at where Lexington Trace is at Estes and Barclay. So when the city goes to extend the sanitary sewer west along Estes, north along Briggs, similar to other projects that we have done in the city, there will be some type of surcharge fee that those properties will pay because the city will have to pay for the extension. Our city will have to pay for its own extension of sanitary sewer to those properties. So similar to Glen Drive North, Calumet Williams project that went in last year, 2 years ago, those properties for those homes that want to connect to the sanitary sewer have to pay this a separate surcharge fee that is passed through ordinance for each water and sanitary sewer project. So that's how those properties would be captured in terms of our normal surcharge fee like structure that we do for our own projects.
Thank you.
Alderman Bevere.
Yeah, you're saying the one subdivision is Lexington, the one on the west side of Route 59?
So Lexington encompasses, I guess, on the west side of 59, north of Estes, it's ending in 023, 024.
Yeah, they're not paying the tap-on fee because they're under the IGA.
They were included in the Duke Parkway IGA IGA where they had to pay back Duke for the
Okay.
extension of sanitary sewer.
And then the subdivision on the east side has to pay tap-on fees.
The Everton subdivision is, it would be under the normal code tap-on fees.
Okay,
for
so
water.
that's kind of getting the recapture for running the pipe from Landon Drive is what's
It's
going
not
on.
it's not an equal, the tap-on fees for developments in general are based upon the water service sizes. So whatever services they're extending to the buildings for the apartments or the townhomes, they would pay our standard code fees for tap-ons.
Okay.
Alderman Goodman.
If that's all the discussion, I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council direct staff and the City Attorney to prepare an ordinance to amend ordinance number 1395 in a manner consistent with Senior Civil Engineer Hawking's recommendations.
Second.
Here we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you for all that information and clarification. Appreciate it. Our next item is consideration to authorize preparation and submittal of a community development block grant application for city road work and detention pond stabilization work in the Summer Lake subdivision. Senior planner Natalia Domovasova will tell us about this.
Thank you. So DuPage County Community Development Commission has opened up a grant application program for the Community Development Block Grant Neighborhood Investment Programs. And this time it's a 3-year grant program from 2020 to 2022. This program is targeted specifically for various infrastructure improvements in the areas that are over 45% of low and moderate income population. And from a staff perspective, we looked at these areas that would potentially qualify in the city of Warrenville, and we're able to identify 2 projects that could score pretty good on the scoring system for this grant application. And those projects include, one of them is the roadway infrastructure project in the Summer Lake subdivision that's generally located south of, in the section of the subdivision that's located south of Batavia Road, west of Route 59. There are a number of square courts areas that are in need of resurfacing, along with curb and gutters along the side and sidewalks and some ADA improvements to the sidewalks. So this project is in the city's work plan to be potentially implemented in the year of 2021. And we felt that this could be one of the projects to apply for this funding. The other one is also in Summer Lakes, generally in the same area. That's near the clubhouse. That's the detention pond, the stormwater management facility that services Summer Lake subdivision, but also part of the public watershed, the existing Ferry Creek there. That detention pond is in need of repair. It's there's great erosion problems that created some issues along the banks, and they need to be stabilized. The Summer Lake subdivision is taking a lead on preparing engineering plans for that project, and essentially they will be ready for construction next year. And that project amounts to approximately $150,000 in just construction costs. The roadway project is approximately $440,000 in construction costs only. So the deadline to submit the applications for the CDBG grant is October 11. That's coming up quickly. There's fairly extensive application process, and there are a number of requirements that we would have to meet. And one of them is to have the city council authorize us to apply for this grant opportunity. And from staff perspective, this is what we recommend. The city council authorizes staff to apply for this grant opportunity for these 2 projects, and then potentially approve the resolution that would document this authorization. And that resolution would be prepared for the next city council meeting, assuming the positive outcome of tonight's vote.
Questions regarding this? Alderman Davalos?
So this is county money for these grants, right? DuPage County?
Well, it is a federal
it's federal.
money, but the DuPage County is the administrator of this grant for region.
Okay, so the remainder of the money outside, let's say they get the grant, part of this looks like it's sidewalks and curbs and gutters, so that would be in our road budget. And the one for the bank, for the, the other part of that would be taken care of by Summer Lakes?
Well, this is the thought process, yes, because this is essentially a private project.
Right.
It's entirely located in the Summer Lakes subdivision, and they're well aware of this, and they're working on this. However, in order to receive any grant funding, the municipality has to make that application and be the applicant. So if we are to move forward and make a formal application for this grant funding, we will have to work out the legal aspect of it, and most likely we'll enter in some type of agreement with the Summer Lakes Homeowners Association as a legal entity in this case. So we will work out these details with the city attorney We did talk to the homeowners association representative. They were very much interested in moving forward with the application. If approved, I think I missed that. If approved, it could fund up to 50% of the construction costs.
The Summer Lakes Homeowners Association.
The grant money would cover.
The grant, okay. Okay.
For both projects.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Alderman Goodman?
So just to get my head around the private aspect of it, if we become the applicant, then we would perhaps structure something through the city attorney so that we would pay and Summer Lakes would pay us back the other half?
Well, this is a reimbursement grant, yes, and somehow we will have to figure out the details of the payment. However, the Summer Lakes Homeowners Association confirmed that they do have funds available for this, to construct this project.
So they would perhaps then spend the money and be reimbursed from the grant program, and we would not pay any money from the city at all.
That would be
that
the
would be better.
ideal situation, and that would be the goal towards we'll try to move forward.
Okay, but if we're required to be the applicant, are we also required to have any financial stake in this?
There is as part of application, there is a required financial commitment that we will have to figure out who's going to be providing that. And then we will work that into that legal agreement with the association. I've already had a discussion with the city attorney, and she identified the same questions, and she said we will be able to work something out. We don't have details yet. This opportunity just became available. In fact, on Friday last week, we submitted the first step, the letter of intent, and which was accepted by the county at the end of the day on Friday, which means that they gave basically us a green light to apply for these grants.
Okay, can I ask whether we intend to, outsource a lot of the application writing then to Summer Lakes, who has more of the information about this, or is staff going to be spending a lot of time on this on their behalf? You said it's an extensive application process.
Well, as far as writing, from what I reviewed, it's not a whole lot of writing, and the Summer Lakes Association retained the professional engineering company, ERA, as the a consultant who prepared an extensive report for the work that they are going to be doing to the detention pond. So a lot of material is already written there. As far as the extensive application and requirements, what I meant is, for example, one of them is that in order to apply for this grant, you have to have a formal public hearing. Before the public, you have to present the project, and you have to receive input. And that is something that has to happen before October 11. So things like this. The Summer Lakes Homeowners Association is prepared, based on our conversation last week, to assist us with whatever information we would need to
Okay,
make that application.
Yeah, that's a very short time frame, so that's probably too short of a time frame to put any notice out to any other associations in town about projects that they might have or other things that they might consider to be eligible. I mean, that we're talking about doing something for one private property owner that we aren't offering to all of our other private property owners. And I know that there are probably different requirements that might apply differently in different parts of town. I completely understand that, but I don't want anyone to feel slighted.
Well, the key here is the low to moderate income areas are well defined. And
Yes.
this is pretty much the only area in town that would meet that criteria. And that's one of the key.
Okay.
So other subdivisions would we looked at other projects in other subdivisions, but they would just simply not score.
That's okay. That's a good clarification. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? If not, someone care to make a motion? Alderman Wilson?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council, one, authorize staff to prepare and submit community development block grant applications for the city's Summer Lakes Square Courts roadway project and the Summer Lakes Homeowner Association Detention Pond Stabilization Project. And two, approve a resolution authorizing the submission of a community development block grant application and designating a grant signator.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. There's a series of decision package status reports, activity reports, vacancy reports that I will just read into the record. If anyone has any comments or questions regarding these next 4 items, please stop me and we will discuss those. But they're always included, they're always provided by staff, and they're always excellent. So we will review and file the Community Development Department's fiscal year 2020 work program and decision package status report for your information, and we will review and file the quarterly economic development activity report also for your information, and we will review and file commercial space vacancy report for your information, and we will review and file the bi-monthly code enforcement activity report for all of our information. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, if not, there's no miscellaneous business. If someone would like to make the final motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Thank you very much. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And I see none. The motion of the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.